Ukraine has unveiled a new weapon that is wreaking havoc on Russian front lines. Since hitting the eastern Donbass, this class of ground robots has become both a symbol of survival and a giant nightmare for Moscow. At first glance, it looks less like a weapon and more like a rolling toolbox, but that simplicity is exactly what makes it unstoppable. Let's explore how Ukraine built it, what it can do, and why it's shifting the balance of power on the battlefield. To understand why this little machine matters, you first need to picture the battlefield that made its invention necessary. Since early 2024, Russia's been trying to regain momentum through relentless assaults. The pressure has been focused on eastern cities like Donetsk, Kupiansk, and Avdiivka. These places were already destroyed once, then rebuilt, not with streets but with trenches. Now those same areas are being pounced on once again. Week after week, Russia throws more soldiers, more machines, and more firepower into the fight, hoping that constant pressure will finally break Ukraine's defenses. The Kremlin strategy is brutal and straightforward. First, they flood the area with artillery. Then they send waves of infantry to storm whatever's left. If it fails, they repeat the process. It's a war of attrition, a slow and grinding test of who runs out of strength, ammunition, or morale first. For Ukraine, that kind of war is impossible to match. The army is smaller, ammunition is limited, and every soldier counts, as opposed to Russia's meat units. Logistics has become a burden, since moving supplies is dangerous and slow. Convoys creep through exposed terrain, constantly watched by drones and satellites that are ready to pounce. Rotating troops takes time, and every delay increases the risk. Even a basic supply run can turn deadly in seconds. Medics trying to reach the wounded face the same threats: exposure, surveillance, and sudden strikes. Basically, the battlefield punishes anything slow, visible, or predictable. It's the Wild Wild West all over again, ruthless and unforgiving. And because of this, Ukraine had to adapt. Instead of trying to match Russia shell for shell, it began thinking differently. Every challenge became a puzzle. How do you move supplies without being seen? How do you strike without exposing your people? How do you stay ahead when the enemy can see everything from above? The answer was not more tanks or more troops, it was creativity. That is how Ukraine's drone revolution began. What started with buzzing hobby drones has grown into a full ecosystem of battlefield machines. Some scout, some bomb, some spy, and now some crawl. That's what brings us to this new weapon that we've been talking about. Dubbed the Cockroach, it is Ukraine's latest design in this new generation of warfare. Unlike the many elegant sky drones they have, it is a rugged ground robot designed to survive terrain and danger that no human should ever face. It was not built in a government lab. It came from garages, basements, and workshops, created by engineers, students, and volunteers, who were tired of watching soldiers die trying to deliver supplies. At first glance, it doesn't look like much. It is squat, four-wheeled, and shaped like a rolling toolbox. But underneath that simple frame is one of the smartest tools Ukraine has put on the battlefield. Officially, it's called a UGV, or Unmanned Ground Vehicle. On the battlefield, however, soldiers call it the Cockroach because, like the insect, it is hard to kill. Hit it, burn it, bury it in the mud, it'll just keep crawling forward. It is exactly what's needed to survive on tough terrain. The Cockroach has various models, each specialized in something different. But in general, each unit can carry up to 200 kilograms of gear, including ammunition, food, water, or medical supplies. It moves at around 20 kilometers per hour, fast enough to deliver essentials, and small enough to hide in trenches, rubble, or shell craters. The operator stays hidden, controlling it remotely like a video game, while the camera on the front sends back a live feed. It is often paired with aerial drones to give it a full view of the battlefield. Every unit looks different because they're made from whatever materials are available. Some are armored with scrap metal or car doors. Others use plastic shells to stay light and quiet. Old motors, steel plates, salvaged batteries, and anything else that works. But they all serve the same mission, which is to keep Ukrainian soldiers alive by taking on the riskiest jobs. The Cockroach is modular. One night it might deliver food and medicine. The next it could save a wounded soldier's life. Its sheer versatility is unmatched. Swap the cargo module and it becomes an ammo mule, delivering rounds straight to the front lines. Engineers can even add cameras, sensors, communication gear, or even explosives and light weapons. Basically, it adapts to whatever the mission requires. What's more is, if it's destroyed, it is cheap and easy to replace. If it survives, you patch it up and you send it back out. That kind of flexibility is priceless in a war where every resource matters, and even a small advantage can shift momentum. And speaking of that grassroots edge, Ukraine has fast-tracked several ground robots into formal frontline use through Brave One and the Defense Ministry, buying them in bulk and shipping them straight to the front lines where they are a menace. 4 stand out. The Tarhan 2K, your Cockroach, leads the lightweights at about $3,000 a pop. It has a 20-kilometer reach and a quick swap setup that turns it from a scout into a hauler in minutes. Its bigger kin, the Tarhan 200, shoulders 200 kilograms, replacing those back-breaking manual hauls. Then there's the Tanchuk, or tank, a tracked beast built for rough grounds and heavy load. Burvi, the Storm, tackles the heaviest jobs, including moving maximum payloads and dragging casualties out under fire. Ukrainian reports and Defense Ministry updates credit these robots with real impact. One general staff tally put casualty drops at 30% for units supported by robotic systems. That's pretty impressive, if you ask me. Unlike traditional military hardware, which takes years and millions to develop, the Cockroach goes from idea to battlefield in weeks. Designers share plans online, soldiers give instant feedback, engineers tweak and improve. It's not just a machine. It's a living, evolving weapon, and in a war that punishes anything slow or rigid, that speed might be Ukraine's greatest advantage. These robots are not sent out haphazardly. Small teams, usually 3 or 4 people, sit in basements, cellars, or hidden shelters and operate them with controllers that look a lot like video game controllers. One person monitors the robot's camera feed, another tracks an aerial drone overhead, and a third listens for enemy radio chatter. It's coordinated work done under pressure, but that coordination is what makes the machine so effective. So let's break it down. Aerial drones act as the robot's eyes from above. They hover over rubble and broken streets, giving operators a full picture of where threats might lie and which routes are safe. The Cockroach follows the path shown on the drone feed, using debris, ruins, and natural cover to stay hidden. If the operator needs a closer view, they can switch to the robot's camera. This 2-layer approach turns what would normally be a risky supply run into a carefully guided operation. Timing is critical. Most missions take under 30 minutes to keep the robot out of reach of Russian surveillance and artillery. Operators often move at night, when thermal imaging is less effective, or at dawn when shadows create natural cover. They plan every route carefully, avoiding open streets and areas where enemy patrols or drones might spot them. The machines themselves are practical and rugged. Some are fitted with camo tarps to blend into the terrain, while others are reinforced with scavenged metal to survive nearby shelling. Wheels are tough enough to roll over debris and mud, and batteries can be swapped quickly in the field. If a motor fails or a control system goes down, a replacement can be installed in minutes. The goal is not perfection, but reliability and repeatability. It is cheaper to lose one and replace it than to risk a human operator. Missions don't always go smoothly. Shells can land nearby, cameras can get damaged, and sometimes a robot is lost completely. Even so, the teams keep going. Spare parts and pre-built replacements are always ready. Each failure is a lesson, and each success strengthens the system. Take one night outside Toretsk last fall. A squad from the 20th Operational Brigade had been cut off for 2 days after Russian artillery turned their supply road into a crater field. Ammo was down to a few magazines per man, and the medic had run out of tourniquets. A human runner would have been spotted in minutes. Instead, operators in a Konstantinivka basement sent a Cockroach on a 6-kilometer crawl. It hugged tree lines, paused under collapsed roofs, and waited out a passing Russian FPV drone. 70 minutes later, it reached the squad, dropping 180 kilograms of 155mm shells and plasma bags, then returned to a pickup point. The squad held a position for another 4 days and knocked out 2 Russian BMPs before rotating out. That's not the only story. There's a lot more. Back in June, the 13th Khatia Brigade pulled off a move that left even hardened medics stunned. Just take a look. One of their guys took shrapnel in the leg during a night push near Bakhmut. The position was pinned down. No vehicles could get close, and carrying him out on foot meant stepping into a drone kill zone. So the team turned to the Tarhan 2K, their trusty Cockroach. They loaded the soldier onto the flat cargo bed, strapping him tight, and sent the robot on a 12-kilometer crawl through shell holes, collapsed trenches, and a minefield that the Russians thought was sealed. The operator sat 2 kilometers back in a cellar, guiding it with a live feed while an overhead drone watched for threats. The Cockroach paused under a burnt-out truck when a Russian FPV buzzed past, and then it rolled on. 90 minutes later, it reached the pickup point. Medics grabbed the wounded man, slapped on a tourniquet, and got him to a field hospital. He kept the leg. The robot? A few scratches, 1 cracked wheel, and back in action 2 days later. That single run wasn't a fluke. Khatia now uses ground robots for every tough evac, and other units are copying the playbook. One cheap machine just rewrote what too risky really means. These kinds of stories start small but spread fast. Units that saw a cockroach save their position began demanding their own. Volunteer workshops in Dnipro and Kharkiv ramped up output. Alongside grassroots makers, modest government-backed UGV programs and small defense startups helped scale what volunteers began. Firms such as Brave One and Termerland supplied parts, ran field tests, and set up small batch production lines, speeding the move from garage prototype to frontline-ready unit. To the troops, this ground robot, it's a lifesaver. What makes the Cockroach truly powerful isn't just what it destroys, but what it represents. It changes the basic mathematics of war. Russia spends millions to move and armor its forces, while Ukraine counters with a machine that costs less than an artillery shell. Each successful mission increases that imbalance, draining the enemy's budget as well as its troops. Russia can't sustain this. Regional governments are cutting signing bonuses for recruits, defense spending is tightening, and sanctions are choking off oil revenues. The Kremlin is burning through reserves to fund a war that is being outpaced by Ukrainian ingenuity. Every Cockroach mission is more than a tactical win. It is a financial blow to Moscow. On the other hand, Kyiv keeps pushing. This war of invoices, as Ukrainian engineers call it, has turned basements and auto shops into micro-factories. 3D printers, spare parts, and open-source software replace bureaucracy. What used to take months of procurement now happens overnight. It's not an economy of scale, it's an economy of speed. And that's the quiet power behind it all. While Russia burns fuel to keep its heavy machinery alive, Ukraine wins by staying light, cheap, and endlessly adaptive. Field reports show a 70% success rate on supply runs inside the fortress belt, compared to 20% for trucks. Losses averaged 1 robot every 3 missions, but each lost machine saved an average of 2 human lives, according to brigade medics. Once commanders saw the Cockroach successfully handle supply and evacuation runs, they began asking a new question. If a robot can safely deliver ammunition and medics, could it also be adapted to attack? That thought would soon transform the Cockroach from a supply mule into a weapon. At first, the changes were small and careful. Engineers and volunteer builders tried different ways to mount heavier loads and to protect sensitive parts from shrapnel. They tested whether the robot could operate under fire and still get back. Then someone had a blunt, terrible idea that made a lot of sense under the circumstances. If you can put supplies on a robot, you can put something explosive on it. If you can guide it close enough to an enemy position, that charge can be detonated without anyone nearby. That converted a supply drone into a weaponized UGV. Those weaponized versions now come in different shapes. Some are designed to get close and blow themselves up, acting like remote charges that move across a minefield or through a trench. Others carry a device that can disable vehicles or explode near groups of soldiers. When a cheap robot can ruin an expensive vehicle or cut down a squad, the math of war changes. A machine that costs $2,000 can end a vehicle worth $4 million, or take out a position with fewer risks and less planning than a human assault. That cost imbalance is brutal. For commanders on the ground, the calculation becomes about risk and reward. Sending human troops into a killing zone is expensive in lives and morale. Sending a robot that you'd expect might be lost is, by comparison, a small price to pay. That shift makes commanders rethink how to assault positions and how to hold ground. Advance slowly and carefully, or risk running into a swarm of low-cost robots that can detonate or disable your equipment. The effect is not only physical, it is also psychological. Much like with dronophobia for the overhead drones, Russian soldiers now move with a new kind of caution on the ground too. They worry about anything that moves into no man's land. Boots on the ground hesitate at places they used to cross confidently. That hesitation matters. War is often decided by who acts faster and with more conviction. When troops pause to check for robots, the momentum dies and the assault plans unravel. What might have been a quick push becomes a cautious slog. Weaponization also encouraged further innovation on the Ukrainian side. Teams began experimenting with sensors and simple triggers to make the robots smarter in a crude way. Operators learned to use distraction tactics, sending a supply model in one direction while a weaponized model snuck along another route. They combined aerial drones and ground robots so that one would draw attention and the other would do the real damage. The battlefield became a system of small machines working together, each doing a job the human body could not do safely. One February dawn near Kupiansk, a Russian motorized column attempted to breach a tree line held by Ukraine's 92nd Brigade. Ukrainian scouts spotted the column early, 8 BTRs and 2 T-72s rolling in loose formation. With artillery out of range, drone operators sprang into action. FPV drones and ground units coordinated a rapid response, stalling the lead vehicles and exposing the column. Ukrainian mortars followed up, and by sunrise, multiple Russian vehicles were destroyed. The defenders had held firm, and shown the power of coordination with tech. Russia noticed. Within weeks, frontline reports showed new countermeasures. Soldiers welded metal cages over trenches to snag low-crawling robots. Patrols carried EMP grenades to fry electronics. Fiber-optic FPV drones were laid flat in the grass, waiting to strike anything that rolled. None of it worked perfectly. Cages slowed movement and created blind spots for Ukrainian snipers. The EMP range was short, and fiber drones needed perfect placement and still missed half the time. Ukraine responded in days. Cockroaches gained wider tracks to climb cages. New versions switched to wired control for the last 100 meters, immune to jamming. Every Russian fix bought time, but Ukraine iterated faster. The numbers tell the story. By spring, Ukraine had deployed dozens, possibly hundreds, of Cockroach ground robots across Donbass. These machines, cheap and expendable, helped resupply cut-off squads and disrupt Russian movements. While they are not all designed for direct combat, they've contributed to vehicle losses and slowed infantry advances, especially in sectors like Kupiansk. Ukrainian commanders report fewer successful Russian probes, where drones operate in coordinated swarms. The Cockroach doesn't win battles alone, but it helps turn momentum into a crawl. However, this does not mean that the Cockroach is unbeatable. When used for attack, it is still a blunt instrument. Many are lost to artillery and electronic interference. But the point is scale. Ukraine can field dozens of these robots, sometimes hundreds, because they are cheap and fast to produce. Losses are expected, and despite them, the work continues. That attrition model fits Ukraine's needs in this phase of the war, because the alternative is losing men and letting positions collapse. There are moral and legal questions too. Turning a rescue and a supply platform into a weapon raises hard issues about escalation and about the rules of war. These machines are automatic or remote, with no consciousness, but the choice to weaponize them are made by people. That changes how warfare is waged, and how civilian observers must judge actions on both sides. For now, the urgency of survival has outweighed those debates for many on the ground, but they are real, and they matter. Ultimately, this invention did not turn the tide by itself. It did not win battles alone. What it did do is tilt the balance in small but meaningful ways. It reduced the risk for Ukrainian soldiers. It raised the cost of attack for Russian commanders. It created a new layer of warfare, where cheap machines can blunt expensive tactics. And once a side makes that kind of adaptation, it becomes hard to reverse. And people outside Ukraine are paying attention. Military planners, defense analysts, and tech innovators are watching closely. Poland is exploring Ukrainian drone tactics, and NATO experts are studying how ground robots like the Cockroach could reshape battlefield logistics. What's beginning on the battlefields of eastern Ukraine is unlikely to stay there. The same designs that crawl through rubble today could one day deliver aid through flood zones or carry medicine into disaster areas. The line between military and civilian robotics is disappearing pretty fast. That simplicity, though, is a double-edged sword. It's easy to build, and it's also easy to copy. Smaller nations or even militant groups could soon deploy their own swarms of improvised machines. Innovation moves faster than regulation, and the Cockroach is living proof of that. Yet within that risk lies opportunity. The same pressure that forced Ukraine to innovate could eventually fuel its recovery. Machines built for war could rebuild homes, clear minefields, and reconnect shattered towns. It's a grim but fascinating paradox. Technology born from destruction might one day save more lives than it ever took. Ukraine is showing what happens when urgency meets creativity. These machines aren't just delivering supplies or carrying explosives, they're proving that small, fast teams can outthink bigger, slower ones. Russia, on the other hand, is stuck in its own system. It's hardly innovative because decisions take time and change moves slowly. Every new Ukrainian invention forces a reaction, and that reaction often comes too late. That's why something as simple as a robot with wheels can have such a big impact. And it's not just about what it does, it's about how quickly it adapts. At the center of all this is a simple idea. Give smart people the tools and the freedom to solve real problems, and they'll build things that matter. In Ukraine, that idea is alive in every robot crawling through the dirt, every drone flying overhead, and every volunteer working late to tweak a design that might save lives tomorrow. The Cockroach is just one example. There are many others. Each new prototype adds something like speed, resilience, and unpredictability. And every time Russia tries to catch up, it burns more time, more energy, and more resources. That imbalance is one of the reasons Ukraine continues to hold the line, even when the odds say they shouldn't be able to. And Russia didn't just notice the Cockroach, they felt it. When a swarm of cheap, fast-moving robots starts reshaping the battlefield, you don't get the luxury of ignoring it. The challenge isn't spotting the threats necessarily, it's figuring out how to stop it. On paper, the answers seem obvious. jam the signals, block the paths, set traps, patrol harder, but in practice, none of that really sticks. Every time Russia tries something new, Ukraine adjusts faster, leaving Russian forces reacting instead of controlling the fight. Jamming sounds good until you realize the Cockroach can switch frequencies, run on backup links, or even operate on its own for short stretches. Physical barriers might slow one down, but they don't stop the next 10. Mines and patrols catch a few, but the sheer number of machines and their ability to improvise routes makes large-scale defenses unreliable. For every Russian move, Ukraine already has built a counter. It's not just clever, it's constant. Trying to stop the Cockroach also pulls Russian forces into a losing equation. Every countermeasure costs time, money, and manpower. Instead of pushing forward or reinforcing positions, units are stuck chasing machines that cost less than a single shell. Ukraine can afford to lose a few. Russia can't afford to keep chasing them. That imbalance doesn't just show up in the moment, it builds up over time, turning into a slow bleed. Of course, like we've already established, the Cockroach isn't untouchable. Plenty get destroyed by artillery, explosives, or bad luck. But that's baked into the strategy. Ukraine built the system around attrition. These machines are cheap, quick to rebuild, and designed to take risks so humans don't have to. Losing a few doesn't break the plan, it's just reinforcing it. The simpler the design, the more sustainable it becomes. And that's the real shift. Every robot that gets through delivers something useful. Supplies, intel, explosives, it doesn't matter. What matters is that Russian forces have to adjust again and again. They move more slowly, they rethink their routes, they invest in defenses that never fully work. Innovation keeps pulling ahead, and the battlefield starts to favor the side that's willing to experiment. By the time Russia reacts, Ukraine is already on to the next version. The Cockroach doesn't just carry gear, it rewrites the rules. Brute force is no longer enough. Every step forward is a risk. Every plan needs a backup. Every assumption is up for grabs. These small, stubborn machines have turned tactical pressure into strategic momentum. And Russia, for all of its firepower, is still just trying to catch up. The impact of the Cockroach goes far beyond supply runs, attacks, or battlefield tactics, though. What Kyiv has built isn't just a battlefield tool. It's a message to the world. Militaries from Washington to Beijing, they're watching, realizing that the future of war may not belong to those with the biggest budgets, but to those who can adapt the fastest. Ukraine has shown that victory no longer depends on massive armies or fleets of tanks. It depends on intelligence, agility, and innovation. For NATO and its allies, these drones are forcing a rethink of strategy. How do you fight a war where cheap, disposable machines can cripple logistics or disable armor at a fraction of the cost? It's not about raw firepower anymore. It's about who can innovate quicker and scale faster. This shift isn't just military, it's geopolitical. If small, decentralized teams can create weapons that rival those of major powers, then the balance of power itself becomes fluid. Nations with limited resources suddenly have new leverage, and that could change how conflicts are fought and who dares to fight them. Across the world, the lesson is clear. In this new era, the sharpest weapon isn't a missile, it's imagination. In the end, the story of the Cockroach really isn't about machines. It's about people, their ingenuity, their resilience, and their refusal to back down. These small robots exist because Ukraine refused to be outmatched. Each one crawling through mud or rubble is an act of defiance against a larger, better-equipped army. They may look rough, but what they represent is powerful. In many ways, the spirit of innovation is not new for Ukraine. It runs through its history, like a thread. Centuries ago, the Cossacks who roamed the steppes fought powerful empires using speed, surprise, and creativity instead of heavy armor. They were known for turning simple tools into weapons, and for using knowledge of the land to outsmart larger forces. That same instinct for adaptability never disappeared, it's only changed form. Today's engineers and drone operators are, in their own way, the heirs of that tradition. The workshop has replaced the saddle, and the circuit board has replaced the saber, but the mindset is the same. When faced with overwhelming strength, they rely on wit, mobility, and resilience. The Cockroach, as crude as it may look, carries that legacy forward. It is the modern expression of an old truth. Ukraine's greatest defense has always been its ability to adapt faster than the enemy can respond. This connection between past and present matters because it shows that innovation under pressure is part of the country's identity. What the world now calls technological genius is also cultural memory. Each new robot that rolls into battle is part of a longer story of defiance and creativity that stretches back for generations. Understanding that link gives this machine a deeper meaning. It's not just a product of war, but a reflection of who the Ukrainian people have always been when faced with impossible odds. Think about it. Russia's massive arsenal of tanks, artillery, and missiles is being challenged by machines that cost less than a used car, and they can be built in a garage. That's the real change happening here. The side with more money or more manpower no longer automatically wins. It's the side that learns and adapts faster. And right now, that side is Ukraine. Every Cockroach that completes a mission, whether carrying ammo, evacuating a wounded soldier, or hitting a target, proves the same point. Creativity and adaptability beat brute force. These robots don't replace courage or strategy, but they enhance both. They take the risk off of human shoulders and let skill and quick thinking matter more than firepower. That is what modern warfare looks like now. It is not just strength, but imagination. The armies that can experiment and learn in real time are the ones that move ahead. If Ukraine can build this kind of innovation under siege, imagine what it can do in times of peace. The same creativity that drives these machines through the trenches could rebuild everything beyond them. Because in the end, the Cockroach isn't just a robot. It's a reminder that adaptability wins, and that courage, ingenuity, and persistence can turn even the smallest player into a force that changes everything. The cockpit of the future is not a jet. It's in a basement with a joystick and a kid who just soldered a better battery pack at 3 in the morning. Thanks for watching.